Hey, everybody. I am so sorry that I did not get chapter 9 read to you guys yesterday. We had a crazy afternoon um, with my husband, got this bolt stuck in his tire, and then he had to get it fixed, but he wasn't in town, and then it ended up going right up until picking up the kids. It was crazy. But everything's good. But I owe you 2 chapters. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to record chapter 9 and post it as one, but I'm also going to record chapter 10 today. So I'll post 9 and 10 if you want to be on track with that. That's fine. Or you could always just listen to 9. Totally fine. So remember, at the end of chapter 8 on Friday, we read that Mean Mimi is shooting the cars into the house on the racetrack. And the last words of chapter 8 say, "Honey, I'm home," called Mean Mimi. And chapter 9 is called Chaos. All right? Mean Mimi, resplendent in her princess garb, ran into the room alongside the Sandra doll. "Get that," she cried, pointing to a pile of toys. The Sandra doll kicked the toys, sending them crashing to the floor. "And that," Mean Mimi cried. This time the Sandra doll kicked through one of Beth's barricades. "What if she kicks the hut?" asked Annabelle in a quavering voice. Melody looked at the walls of the hut in alarm. "Evacuate!" she shouted. "Everybody out!" "Out there?" exclaimed Annabelle, pointing to BJ's room. "We can scatter. We'll be harder to catch." "Scatter, everybody, scatter!" sang the head cutout. "Except for us, of course," she added, with a glance at the cutout's joined hands. As Annabelle fled through the door, she wished again that Auntie Sarah were already manufacturing her spider silk ladder so that Annabelle could climb up to the safety of the ceiling. "Keep the Sandra doll away from the hut," Yvonne cried suddenly. "If she wrecks it, we won't be able to rebuild it." "Yo, Mimi! Over here!" Annabelle nearly froze with terror. Saw Tiffany run through BJ's room, dodging booby traps and piles of toys. She reached the far corner, stuck her thumbs in her ears, and wiggled her fingers at Mean Mimi. "Nee, nee, 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 nee," she called, which was something Annabelle had always wanted to do. Mean Mimi turned and saw Tiffany. "Go get her!" she ordered the Sandra doll. The Sandra doll hesitated. She looked pleadingly at Mimi. All right, so here's kind of a overall room of just a view of the chaos in the room. It's chaos. Everybody's running everywhere, trying to stay safe. Mimi's bossing her toys around. "Oh, all right," said Mimi, sounding highly annoyed. She grabbed a large blanket that had been lying nearby and heaved it towards the Sandra doll. The Sandra doll, big but clumsy as a toddler, tried to catch the blanket, missed it, lurched forward a few steps, and then bent to pick it up. She draped it around her neck and stuck her thumb in her mouth. Then she lumbered across the room in the direction of Tiffany. Mean Mimi turned her attention to Sleeping Billy, who was sitting on the floor amid BJ's toys, picking them up, dropping them, patting them, putting them in his mouth. "On your feet, you big baby," she ordered him, and she grabbed his hand and tugged him. "You're supposed to be helping us," said Mean Mimi, puffing. "Catch somebody. Break something. Get going." Sleeping Billy tottered after the Sandra doll. Annabelle looked around BJ's room and was just thinking that the attack wasn't as bad as she had thought it would be. Certainly it was not moving along very quickly, when she heard a great clinking and clanking from the hallway, and turned around to see 2 things happen at once. First, a barrage of metal cars and trucks began sailing off the end of the racetrack and soaring through BJ's room. And then, with the missiles still flying, a man dressed in a suit that appeared to be composed almost entirely of gadgets, an important-looking helmet on his head, strode grimly through the doorway. He was carrying what looked to Annabelle like a laser stick in one hand. Nearly as frightening were the blinking lights on his helmet. Annabelle couldn't help herself. She let out a scream, and for a few seconds, everyone in BJ's room stopped what he or she was doing. And in those quiet seconds, Annabelle realized that the fighting man's helmet wasn't just blinking. It was making all sorts of noises, beeping and beeping, bleeping and bleeping and pinging and buzzing and zapping. So here's all the cars flying all over the place, and there's the little guy she's talking about right there. Annabelle hid her eyes, and suddenly, chaos. Annabelle opened her eyes in time to see the missiles begin to land in the room. They knocked toys off BJ's bookshelf. They smashed into the drawings tacked to the wall, and one ripped the corner off a baseball poster. Another put a nick in the headboard of the bed. Another put a nick in the corner of the headboard of the bed. One slammed into Yvonne and knocked her off her feet. One popped the top off the lizard's cage, and one soared towards Tiffany. Duck! Shrieked Annabelle, and Tiffany dropped to the ground as a fire truck shot towards her head. Moments later, a Jeep landed in the middle of the room and skidded into Mean Mimi, causing her to fall backwards and land on her bottom. So here's all the crazy stuff flying all over the place, and Mean Mimi fell over. Annabelle would have laughed if she hadn't have been so frightened. Calm, calm, everybody calm, Annabelle heard the cutout sing. Oh, be quiet, said Mean Mimi. Jealous. She's jealous. Always jealous, was the reply. Sandra, Sleeping Billy, Techno Man, cried Mean Mimi. Doesn't anybody remember what we talked about? Sleeping Billy made his way across the room to the Sandra doll then, who took his hand. That's right. Teamwork, said Mean Mimi. The Sandra doll and Sleeping Billy turned wittingly and began marching through the room, not bothering to step over anything in their way. They trod on plastic animals and kicked through the rest of the barricades. They narrowly missed trampling Beth, who was helping Yvonne to her feet, and then Annabelle saw that they were headed for the Lego hut. Tiffany, called Annabelle, help! Tiffany started across the room but was stopped by Techno Man. He stepped in front of her, feet planted solidly apart, holding his weapon in both hands. Not one more step, Missy, or I'll blast you, he said. Tiffany looked at the beeping helmet. She looked at the laser. Then she looked at Techno Man in his eyes and said, Okay, go ahead. There are so many advantages to being plastic, thought Annabelle. Techno Man glanced at Mean Mimi, who glared at him until he said, Oh, as if he had just remembered something, and turned and ran out of the room. As soon as he was gone, Tiffany continued in the direction of the Lego hut. She moved much faster than the Sandra doll and Sleeping Billy, and she reached it several seconds before they did. Then she stood by the doorway in the hut and put her hands on her hips and sang, Tararara boom-da-ay, I lost my pants today. I found them yesterday. Ta-ra-ra boom-da-ay. Annabelle's mouth dropped open, and so did Mean Mimi's, but the PJ Party Pals, the Troll Twins, and even the cutouts began to laugh. And then so did the Sandra doll and Sleeping Billy. There's a picture of Tiffany. She is being funny. Be quiet, Mean Mimi said furiously, but only the Sandra doll obeyed her. Mean Mimi ran from the room. As soon as she was out of sight, the Sandra doll began to laugh again. But all the laughter stopped abruptly when there was another commotion in the hallway outside BJ's room. And then something happened so fast that later Annabelle had trouble describing it, even though she had seen it with her own eyes. From the hallway, did I miss a page? Nope, okay. From the hallway, Annabelle heard the rumble of a motor and the honking of a toy car, and then a large pink VW Beetle zoomed into the room with Techno Man in the driver's seat, his helmet beeping and ringing. Behind the car ran Mean Mimi, holding a complicated-looking box with which Annabelle realized she was controlling the car. The car bumped over everything in its path. It crunched over toys and markers and papers. It knocked Sleeping Billy to the ground, and he fell asleep in an instant. Just when Annabelle was sure Mean Mimi was going to crash the car into the hut, Techno Man leaped out of the driver's seat and snatched up Penny. Gotcha, he cried. Help, yelled Penny. So here's right before she grabbed Penny, because that's Penny right there with the P. And there's Mean Mimi with the controller and Techno Man in the car. After them, shouted Melody, and she and Tiffany and Yvonne and Beth and Waterfall and even Annabelle began to chase the car. They might actually have caught up with it, Annabelle thought, but in the confusion, Mimi steered the car into the lizard's cage. Penny escaped, and Techno Man lost his helmet. As the helmet tumbled to the ground, Annabelle gasped. The beeping and pinging stopped, and Annabelle saw that Techno Man wasn't an action figure after all. He was just an ordinary boy doll wearing a fancy costume. His weapon was just a toy, and his helmet did nothing but make noise. Busted. Look, Tiffany, exclaimed Annabelle. He's just... I know, replied Tiffany. That's why I told him to go ahead and blast me. I didn't think he could do it. Troops, shouted Mean Mimi. Assemble! Annabelle looked at Sleeping Billy napping on the floor, at Techno Man patting his crew cut, and the Sandra doll who was still giggling over Tiffany's song. I said assemble! Mimi hurried across the room to the Sandra doll and snatched away her blanket. Come here! The Sandra doll whimpered but turned to follow Mean Mimi. Sounds like this blanket might have something to do with controlling the Sandra doll. And Annabelle, her eyes large, suddenly whispered something to Tiffany, who repeated it to Penny, Yvonne, and Beth. In a flash, Tiffany and the PJ Party Pals had ambushed Mimi and stolen the Sandra doll's blanket. Now try telling her what to do, Melody said to Mimi. Order the Sandra doll around. Get over here, Sandra, Mean Mimi said weakly. But the Sandra doll only gazed longingly at her blanket, which the PJ Party Pals were holding. She wants her blankie, Annabelle said, surprising herself. She won't do anything you tell her to do unless you have her blankie, will she, Mimi? You can't control her. Oh, no, you can't. Oh, no, you can't. Oh, no, you can't control her, sang the cutouts. All you have to do, Annabelle said to the PJ Party Pals, the troll twins and the cutouts, is let the Sandra doll have her blankie and be nice to her. She'll listen to you. Well, Techno Man, Mean Mimi began to sputter. You can't control him either, said Annabelle. You never could. Techno Man likes to show off, but he's not really an action figure, so nobody has any reason to be afraid of him. Get back here, Techno Man, Mean Mimi shouted, but Techno Man was slinking through the door in the hallway. He gave a small wave over his shoulder and disappeared. Sleeping Billy will still do whatever I tell him, said Mimi. Everyone looked across the room where Sleeping Billy lay in a bed of toys. The Sandra doll was sitting next to him, trying to cover him with her blanket. I have a feeling, said Annabelle quietly, that Sleeping Billy just wants to be with the Sandra doll. Nice army, said Waterfall to Mimi. Mean Mimi began to flounce out of the room. She was only halfway across it when Yvonne shrieked, Oh no! And the cutout sang, Beware the lizard! That was when Annabelle saw BJ's lizard slither over the top of his cage and disappear in the chaos of the room. Screaming and hollering, Annabelle and Tiffany and their new friends ran for the Lego hut, and Mean Mimi fled into the hallway, leaving the Sandra doll and Sleeping Billy behind. Annabelle watched the Sandra doll tug at Sleeping Billy, and help him out of the room. All was quiet at last, except for the sounds of many crickets chirping. Remember when they ran into the cage? They must have let the lizard free. Gross. Disgusting. All right, chapter 10 is called Order, which I will record shortly and post right after this one, okay? Oh, so exciting. See you soon.